welcome back. We have another slightly spooky Halloween related content today where we're going to be making a couple of little pieces of jewellery. So what I'll do is I'll show you what I've created so far and explain the steps that I've taken to do that, and then we'll also create with you. Okay, so I have here a couple of plain metal frames that I'm going to use for some of our jewellery pieces. And what I've done here is yesterday I covered one of our colour jars in our Resi tape. I UV resined on our frames and just hung the little hole lip off the edge, and the reason I've done that is so I could get a nice flat surface here so I could make sure that my little frames didn't leak. I sealed them in with UV resin, and then I used a couple of our colours with our Resi Clear. So I used our red velvet glitter, and we also used our intense sparkle white with our Resi Clear to fill these guys. So my intention today is, with this little silicone mould that I've also filled, is to demold these guys, attach them on. We also have some demolded little green skulls from the same silicone mould that I want to show you how I can attach and adhere to the frame with UV curing resin. And then we're going to show you with these gold moon frames exactly what I've just done here, how I've sealed them in with the UV resin first, and then we're going to fill them with our chunky Mystic Mermaid glitter, which is a really funky colour, very nice and purple related for sort of Halloween. And we're going to add a little bit of jewellery, split rings and earring hangers to some of these moulds. So we'll get started. Now I'm just going to demold these, which should be literally just popping them off. So they've come straight off there, which is great. So when I've put our Resi tape on top of this container here, I've used the glossy surface and stuck the sticky side down on the container. That way it has given us a nice flat clean surface to demold from. So as you've seen, it was really easy for me to just pop these straight off there. So that's why I've set the tape up the way I have. So our next step would be, now that I've demolded those, is I'm going to show you with these two moon frames. I'm just going to sit them on the outside lip so I've got the little hoop hanging over the edge, so that way I can keep my moon flat against the tape here. And we'll be taking our UV resin, and I also have a UV blacklight lamp here, but I'll be taking the UV resin and I just want to run it around the lip of the frame and dribble it in, and just make sure I've got contact between the lip of the frame and letting it sink down and make contact with the base of the tape. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow me to have an area that's sealed in, because if I just pour it in straight away with my Resi Clear and my glitter in it, some of that resin's going to want to leak out. So once I've done this, I will actually be sitting the UV blacklight torch on the top of it, and that will cure this resin, and that will give me a containment area, so when I put in my Resi Clear with my glitter in it, it won't leak everywhere. I'm just going to make sure I've got that right around the base here. So I'm just moving my UV resin around with a skewer. And now I'm going to pop our UV blacklight torch on it. The UV resin, it does start to tack off after about your sort of 1.5 to 2 minute mark. It is suggested with the UV resin though that we keep it under the lamp for about a 5-minute period to get a full cure on it. Now, I mixed up a really tiny batch of our Resi Clear earlier, so please make sure you follow our video of mixing and measuring out if you want further information about that. So I've previously mixed it. I'm going to separate a little bit off now, and I'm going to add some of our chunky glitter to it, so I'm ready to fill in these gold frames here, the moon frame. We don't need a lot of resin, but we do need a lot of chunky glitter, because I want to make sure that my my glitter is full and filling the moons. I don't want to have any sort of translucent resin, so I'm going to put in a fair bit of glitter and mix it through and make sure I don't have much translucent resin showing. So I like to bring my stirrer up and make sure I've got a nice good consistency of my glitter. I've got a little bit of translucent resin showing through, so I might add the tiniest bit more of the chunky glitter back in. Couple more scoops. Okay, I've mixed in my glitter. I'm happy with the consistency now. You don't see a lot of translucent resin coming through. You've got a fair bit of glitter in there. So just as this is finishing, I'm just going to double check and just tap it and just see if my UV resin is hard. And it is hard. And then the next step is I just want to touch it and make sure it's not sticky, and it's not. So I'm happy with the amount of time that that's had under the UV lamp. Now, with my mixed resin and my Mystic Mermaid chunky glitter, I can literally pour in now. And the aim is to fill and maybe have just like the tiniest little bit of a dome slightly raised. So I will just fill it in first. Make sure I've gotten my resin and my glitter right up in the points of the moon. So I'm just helping drag that up a little bit. And then pop a couple more drops in, just so I'm getting that slight dome over with the resin. But I don't want to push it too far because I don't want to break the surface tension and have it leak out the outside of the frame. So I'm going to leave that for a little bit. Because I mixed the glitter in quite vigorously, I've got some really fine air bubbles coming out of it, which are sitting on the top here at the moment. But I do want that to thicken up the tiniest bit before I pop those bubbles with a mist of isopropyl. If I do it now, I have the chance of breaking that surface tension on the side of the little moon frames, and then I will have some leakage. So I just want to leave it until it starts to thicken up the tiniest bit, and then we'll pop those bubbles with a mist of isopropyl. So I'm going to set these guys aside because I've used Resi Clear. This will take 24 hours to cure, but once it's cured, that will be at this stage, which is exactly what I did before. I was able to demold my silver moons that I filled with our red glitter here. So this is a stage that you get them to where you're able to put your earring hooks and everything on and be able to use them. Now that I've got my red moons right in front of me, just to make them that little bit edgier, I'm going to demold a couple of our little silicone skulls here. And what I might potentially do is just possibly arrange them and stick them on the top here. We'll just see what they look like. It looks like a bad moon rising. Sorry, bad mum joke. I think that this composition's pretty cool. So what I'm actually going to do is use my UV curing resin to act like a glue in this case. So I've got my little skulls and I'm going to sit it right across the top of my red moon here and sit it in position, and I'll actually glue that with the UV resin. So I'll tack it down with a little bit of UV resin and then pop it under the UV lamp, black light, and that way it'll hold it in place. I think the best way to tack it down is actually go through the eyes of the skull. So that way it's adhering to the little piece of resin skull, which will adhere to the top of the glitter portion of the moon. Just going to slide them both together and pop them both back under the lamp. That's actually one of the things that I like about the Resi Ultra Cure UV curing resin as well, is because it can be used to join a couple of pieces together and act like a glue. It's always best when you're using it like that though to make sure it's adhering to the piece that you're trying to attach and the base, but not going underneath it, because again, like I mentioned before, if it goes underneath, that means the UV black light can't penetrate it, which means it won't cure. Now while I'm popping the UV light on these guys, I'm going to do something similar with our intense sparkle white diamond frames that I filled. I think we'll demold our little purple skulls here, and I'll mount those on the top of the white diamonds, much the same way as I just did with the red moon and the little black skulls. So that way we've got a little bit more of a, maybe a Wednesday themed earring set here. Just make sure I've got them in position. I'm going to do the same with these guys. I'll just dribble a little bit down in the eyes first, because it's a slightly bigger eye, so I just want to make sure I don't fill it too deep. Just make sure I've got contact around the side of my little skull here. And I can actually pop them all together while they're all curing under the UV black light. Now I've got, just here, I've got an oval silver frame that I'm going to pop one of these little green skulls in that I also made previously from the same silicone mould that I've demolded. I'm going to sit them alone inside the oval and also use the UV resin to go around the outside and join it together. So I'm going to bring back our little base here, so that way I've got it on the tape on the bottom, so when I go around the outside of the skull to seal it against the silver oval frame, I've got a nice flat surface that I can seal it to. Just going to give our moons with our Mystic Mermaid a little bit of a mist with isopropyl. And I've just got it on the fine mist in our spray bottle here, and just enough to pop those bubbles on top there. And misting with the isopropyl actually just breaks that surface tension, so it breaks that bubble, and the resin will self-level underneath. Just testing that all of our UV resin is cured, and it is. So we have our moons with our red glitter, and now we've got our little black skulls on top that's been secured with the UV curing resin. So that's another nice little feature for earrings there. And with our white diamonds, we have our purple skulls now adhered. So I like these ones because they're kind of along the lines of the Wednesday theme of the purple and the white. So I think they look pretty funky, those ones. So I'm going to use the UV resin to go around the external of the frame to secure our skulls in position. Just making sure I've got contact with the frame itself and also the base of the skull. And again, I'm just going to make sure I've got contact with the outside of the oval frame and the actual skull that we've sat in there. Okay, I'm happy with that. So we're going to pop that under the UV black light now. Even though I've got my moons here, they will not cure under the UV black light with the Resi Clear. It is not designed to be cured with a UV light. So it won't hurt it by me popping it over the top of it. And I want that to go under the UV lamp a couple of times so I know it's dried off and cured, and that way it'll secure that skull inside the silver oval frame. Then I'm going to use the UV resin on the actual green skull itself and give it a little bit of a dome. Okay, I'm going to dome these guys, and doming basically means pouring some resin on just on the top surface so you get the dome shape, but you don't pour too much on where it breaks that surface tension and just dribbles off. And sometimes it gives it a nice lifted glossy texture. So we're going to dome on here. And it does mean sort of moving your resin around a bit because the UV resins, they're just that little bit thicker. We have another excellent video with doming too. We domed with our Resi Glaze, where Chrissy is actually domed over on a rainbow candle. So if you want to refer back to it and see it on a doming on a larger scale, please check back on our doming video. All right. So I'm going to be really gentle here because I've still got our wet Resi Clear in our gold moon frames, but I want to pop these guys off. And I might just use, so I don't use too much force, I might just use the pliers to help me lift them because I just don't want to bump my moons. So I've just demolded those, and it's a little bit sticky underneath because my skull wasn't sitting flat at the bottom, it was sitting towards the top of the oval mould. The oval frame, sorry. So I'm just going to pop them back under the UV light on the back side. And then while I'm doing that, I'm going to start on our next little project. With our cute little white skulls that I just demolded, I actually want to pop a couple of little red blood drops on them and then make them into a dangling set of earrings, so a pair of 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the UV curing resin just translucent and create the shape that I want of where the drips will be. Then I'm going to mix over the top of it what is a little bit of a combination of our UV resin with scarlet red dye and our flash mauve metallic powder to give it a red colour. But I only want to put a really, really thin layer of this on because there's a chance that if I make it too thick that it won't cure because I do have pigments in it. So I have to be very mindful of that. I'm just going to move it around a little bit so it looks like a bit more of a drop. Pop that straight under. Do it on our next guy. So I've got my first, even though you can't see it very well, I do have my first layer of droplets on the top of the skulls with the Resi Ultra Cure, which has cured. I'm just going to ever so slightly with my red mix, just pop some colour on top of it. But as mentioned before, I do want to keep it real thin because I do want it to still be able to cure. Okay, so we've got our blood drops on. I'm going to pop them back under the UV black light now. Alrighty, our red's gone off, so I'm putting another layer of our just translucent Ultra Cure on it, just to really give it a dome up effect and just make sure that I've sealed my red in properly. It just really helps exaggerate that real drip effect as well. Then we will actually, I've just had one run over. Let's bring that back up. Pop it quickly under there, start getting it curing off. Okay, so our little blood dripping baby skulls are now dry. So the only thing that's left is for me to join them together. I've got some split rings here from the jewellery kit. And I will just squeeze them back together with my pliers. And so that's our little skull earrings. I did accidentally fill the tiny hole on the top of this one with the UV resin, so I'm just going to use a small drill bit to open that back up to pop these back in, but that's a really simple little fix. Now, one thing I did want to mention, because you would have noticed that I didn't actually use gloves throughout this process. I find that when it's really small, finicky work like this, that I do need to use my hands glove free because otherwise the gloves tend to get in the way and they stick to the UV resin. I do advise you at home, if you have any concerns whatsoever, please make sure you do wear the appropriate PPE and wear your gloves. I also made sure, because I wasn't wearing the gloves, that I didn't actually technically touch any of the resin in particular when it was wet. If that happened as an accident, then I was able to remove it immediately by cleaning with some isopropyl. So just keep that in mind, guys. But otherwise, I hope you really enjoyed creating some spooky little earrings, either for Halloween theme or if it's just your thing, kind of like me. But remember to like, subscribe, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. But until next time, guys, see you later.